Hey there, Michael Sherlock here with Shock Your Potential, and this is Lake Tahoe. Unfortunately, it's also my last day here. I hate leaving. It's been an incredible trip. I've been in California for almost the last 2 weeks. I have to head home. All good things must come to an end. It's a little bit of work, a little bit of play, but a lot of reflection at times. Now, the other day I went for a hike with my husband. We went up about 1,360 feet up on a mountain outside of the Lake Tahoe area here. And as we were climbing, I just started reflecting on a couple things that we've got going on with Shock Your Potential, a couple things about, this work-life balance, but also a little bit about what happens when you face an obstacle that might feel a little intimidating to you. Now, how did I start thinking about this? Well, first, when I realized where we were going to climb on this mountain, you look at it and you see where you are at the base, and you see where you want to go. And in between, you know that's a lot of climbing. In fact, we climbed about an hour straight up. And along the way, you have different obstacles that you run into. But before you start that journey, much like other journeys in our life, in our work, some things can be a little frightening. So as I broke it down, I was thinking about, sometimes you have a new project. Maybe you have a new job. Maybe you're going for a hike up a mountain, literally. But regardless of what it is, you've got to make some decisions about actually going through and following the process or following the path. And we have something really exciting coming up with Shock Your Potential. About this time next year, we're going to be hosting a conference for entrepreneurs in Kenya. And it's a little daunting. I've never done anything like this, never done anything quite this big before, but it's a little bit like that mountain climb. It's where you look at the base of that mountain and say, I know I can do it. But man, between here and there's a lot of obstacles. So, I took some notes when I got back from my little hike and put it in perspective. So, first of all, I think that anytime that we are ready to embark on something new, there's butterflies, right? You think, gosh, can I do it? In fact, sometimes it feels like you're not even sure your feet are going to move, like they're rooted. Like there's boulders all over the place on your feet, and it's keeping you from forward momentum. But as you start to take the first couple steps, you realize that, maybe it's not as daunting as I really thought it was. Maybe there's some perspective here that I can take. So when you take that first step, I thought about how we root ourselves. Each of us have a root system. And personally, part of my root system is creativity, positivity, stubbornness. It's part of my root system. And in that root system, I know that when I face challenges, I have to sometimes dig down to those roots to give myself the courage to keep moving. And because I'm creative, often I can find myself ways out of situations that might be challenging. Because of my positivity, I believe that it's going to work out all right. And frankly, because of my stubbornness, I'm unwilling to give up on anything. So remembering where our roots are will help us when it feels like maybe you're not sure if you can make that climb, that you can achieve that obstacle, that you can really reach that destination. But once you think about those roots and what your roots are, what are those things that you can kind of find when you need that help? Remember also to be flexible. That sometimes the course that we take requires us to, make some adjustments in order to stay strong through the process. It's also important that we take time to watch the signs and follow them. Now, sometimes the signs aren't all that clear. Sometimes we might get some mixed signs or mixed signals, but it's important that we check in and make sure we're on the right path. Much like a hike up a mountain, even though the path looks clearly marked, it's important to keep an eye out for those other little arrows that let you know that you're actually going in the right direction. I think it's also important that sometimes you go with the flow, that you realize that Things aren't always going to be as easy as you expected. They're not always going to go in the directions that you're looking for. And much like a waterfall, the water in the waterfall is doing a couple things. I mean, it's going where it goes, but it's also forging new paths and new grounds along the way. So a waterfall, yes, the water in the waterfall is following along the river and following the path of the waterfall, but it also creates the path as it goes. And I think when we remember that flexibility, that sense of go with the flow, it allows us to take some deep breaths, to step back and say, okay, all right, for right now, I'm just going to let some things happen because maybe and probably that's actually part of the journey. Then, as we got a little closer to the top, I thought it was important that we stopped frequently just to see where we were. Not just to check and make sure we were on the right path, but to enjoy the scenery along the way. I mean, it's really easy for us sometimes to feel like the destination is the only thing that we're working towards. But the journey can be just as enjoyable, and in fact can make the achieving of the destination even that much more precious when we've stopped to look out, to see where we are, to get a vantage point, kind of reconnoiter a little bit, but to also say, wow, look at how much I'm already accomplishing. Look at how far I've come. Look at what the view is from here. Even though when I started, I didn't think I could go where I needed to go. So we are embarking on this new journey with this conference, and I'm really, really excited about what this is going to mean. This is going to be a brand new element of what we do with my company, but it's also going to be an opportunity to be immersed in another culture, in another area, get to know the people of Kenya more closely, for me to get to be able to meet my team live and in person, which I'm very excited about. But it's about taking the journey that makes sense. If you would have asked me 5 or 6 years ago if I would be doing the things that I'm doing now, I would have said, no way. Or, hey, maybe, sounds great, but I wouldn't have thought of them. If you would have asked me 2 months before the pandemic, I would have said, I don't know, probably not, because the path I'm on is very comfortable. It's well marked. It's well lit. It's well traveled. I know this path. The pandemic, our lives, challenges that we face, put us on different paths, force us to be in different terrain, take us a little out of our comfort zone like we talked about last week. And out of those elements, we have the opportunity to see new things, experience new things, achieve greater heights, but to really test ourselves in new ways. It's not always easy to take those new paths. It's not comfortable. It can be dirty and messy. In fact, when I got back from my hike, I couldn't see the colors of my shoes anymore. They started out blue. They were not blue when we got back. But the dust on those tennis shoes proved also the hike that I'd had. You know, the different muscles that got stretched by hiking straight uphill, jumping over boulders, climbing on top of boulders to see the scenery. Those things stretched me physically, but also emotionally, mentally. And when I'm in those situations, then we go back to the roots. Then that pulls out my roots even more. My creativity, which made me start to take pictures of things that I knew I wanted to talk about in this morning motivation. Made me think about the correlations to the hike up a mountain and the journey of a new project, the journey of a new business opportunity, the journey that requires a lot of trust. But at the end of the day, it also requires your commitment to actually do it. Now, I know that at least one person or a few people watching this right now are facing new journeys, new challenges, and might not be certain that they can achieve those heights. But remember, when we know the location we want to achieve, we take those first steps. We remember what keeps us rooted. We remain flexible. Sometimes we go with the flow. We're always going to find different vantage points to realize how incredible each one of us really are. And when we know that, then that adds new roots for the future. So that's what's motivating me this week. Next week, it might be a little different after I'm back in the home office. But for this week, I challenge you. Figure out what hill you want to climb. Put on your shoes and get going. Thanks for joining me.